Imagine this. You're standing in a dimly lit room. Shelves stretch from floor to ceiling, each crammed with books promising the same thing: a better you. 7 Steps to Unstoppable Confidence. Unlock the Giant Within. Atomic Habits for Infinite Success. The titles shimmer like neon signs in a desert gas station, promising salvation, transformation, power. That gnawing sense that no matter how many tips you read, how many journal entries you write, how many morning routines you hack, you're still orbiting the same internal emptiness, still trapped in the same loop. Not because it's wrong, but because it's too right, too vague, and far too easy. And yet you feel it. That creeping hollowness, that quiet shame. You turn a page, and a phrase leaps out at you. You just need to believe in yourself. Something in you winces. You've meditated until your legs went numb. You forced yourself into cold showers and vision boards and gratitude-less sand for a moment. Yes, you felt something. A spark, a jolt, fleeting taste of maybe this is it. You've tried, haven't you? You've repeated affirmations in the mirror while your soul rolled its eyes. But it never lasted. The spark fizzled. The notebook gathered dust. The motivation ghosted you like a summer fling. Soon the shame returned. More cunning now, whispering, "You failed the method. You're the problem." But what if the method was never meant to work? Not journaling, not visualizing your higher self. Just existing, unedited. We live in an age where self-improvement is the new religion, and every bookstore is a cathedral. But unlike religion, which once offered transcendence, self-help offers performance, constant self-monitoring, relentless inner branding. You've been promoted to a prison of your own creation. The constant tension of almost there. One more strategy, one more epiphany, one more dopamine-primed scroll down a guru's Instagram feed. It's not healing, it's hope trafficking. You build it yourself, brick by well-intentioned brick. With the raw, unresolved, often terrifying reality of who you are beneath all the self-improvement masks. Why is rest seen as laziness, stillness, mistaken for failure, and authenticity sacrificed on the altar of constant self-enhancement? That your suffering is simply a puzzle to be solved with enough mindset tricks, morning rituals, or dopamine hacks? What if most self-help is not merely ineffective but toxic in disguise? What if the thing we cling to in desperation is actually the very thing keeping us stuck? How can you find yourself when you're constantly being told who you're supposed to become? Here's the paradox. Self-help preaches freedom, but it often disguises another form of control, a new performance, a subtler cage. The genre whispers, "You are broken, but fixable." It flatters you with agency, then sells you the illusion that your entire worth is a project to be managed. But tell me, when did you last feel at peace just being not optimizing? Because what you'll find once the fog clears isn't more help, but the root of why you needed it in the first place. You see, there's something existentially unsettling here. You are the CEO of You Inc. Congratulations, you've been promoted to a prison of your own creation. When did we start confusing healing with productivity? When did we start thinking that fixing ourselves meant turning into sleek, smiling machines? Think about it. Is it really self-help if the self being helped is always one step out of reach? These books don't offer answers, they offer suspense. Maybe you're not broken. Maybe you're just tired of pretending to be fixable. Maybe what you need is not another system, but a confrontation. You're not failing the self-help system. The system is failing you. And somewhere deep in your psyche, you already know this. You're finally ready to face it. Let's peel back the glossy covers, silence the feel-good slogans, and dig beneath the motivational rubble. Because what you'll find, once the fog clears, isn't more help, but the root of why you needed it in the first place. And that changes everything. You've felt it, haven't you? That strange dissonance between your outward quest to improve and the quiet voice inside whispering something's off. You followed the steps. You read the books. You applied the techniques. But beneath the surface, a deeper question lingers. Why is it so hard to feel whole, even when you're doing everything right? To answer that, we need to go further than productivity hacks and mindset shifts. We need to dive into the psychological mechanics and philosophical traps that built the entire foundation of the self-help empire, discover why that foundation is cracked. Start with this. Man is not what he thinks he is what he hides. Malraux. It's a seductive idea that you can become the ideal version of yourself through sheer effort and clarity. Self-help at its core assumes that the self is an object, something to be observed, upgraded, and eventually perfected. But this idea is built on a flawed, even dangerous premise that the self is stable, that there's a solid you underneath all the mess, waiting to be polished like a gemstone. Carl Jung would scoff. He argued that personal growth isn't about becoming something better, but about integrating the parts of you you've exiled. Your anger, your grief, your shame, your darkness. To Jung, the psyche is not a machine. It's a living, breathing labyrinth, a complex system of masks, shadows, archetypes, and wounds. It wants to bypass it. You curate your morning ritual for Instagram while secretly begging the universe to give your life meaning. But self-help doesn't want to integrate the shadow. It wants to trick you into smiling while your house is burning. It hands you slogans instead of silence, habits instead of healing, scripts instead of soul. You often find that there is no solid answer. Or worse, the answer is someone else's voice, a parent's expectation, a society's standard, a guru's dogma. Brave New World described a society obsessed with comfort, pleasure, and optimization, but spiritually barren. The people were happy but hollow, efficient but enslaved. Sound familiar? That is its hidden sin. Instead of helping you face yourself, it teaches you to market yourself. And so you perform wellness. You fake happiness. It doesn't solve the crisis. It just makes you feel okay with avoiding it. Teacher warned us long ago, he who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow. And self-help sells exactly that. The illusion that you can control your chaos. But self-help is obsessed with the how. This is exhilarating and terrifying. The burden of freedom is that no book, no guru, no system can tell you what matters. You must choose. Wake up at 5 a.m., avoid sugar, say thank you to the mirror, optimize your calendar. These are the hows of surface living. But what is the why? The question terrifies people, because when you finally pause, look in the mirror and ask, why am I doing any of this? Truth shatters illusions. It humbles. It destabilizes. What? But it's the only thing that can set you free. You've been building a life on borrowed beliefs. Aldous Huxley, ever the prophet, saw this coming. Modern self-help is Huxley's soma, a sweet-tasting drug that numbs the pain of existential confusion. Let's take it further. Man is condemned to be free. Jean-Paul Sartre believed that the human condition is marked by radical freedom, that we are responsible for inventing meaning in a world that offers none. But most people don't want that freedom. They want certainty. They want guarantees. Buy this course, and you'll never feel lost again. Do these 10 steps, and anxiety will vanish. Lie. The real reason most self-help does work is because it offers you safety when what you need is truth. Truth is not safe. And here's where the trap tightens. You begin the self-help journey thinking you're becoming more free. But often you're just changing cages. From parental expectations to hustle culture, from religious guilt to productivity guilt, from self-loathing to self-optimization addiction. The language has changed, the prison has not. And yet you still hope. Why? Because the alternative facing the chaotic, contradictory, often painful nature of the real self feels unbearable. Arthur Schopenhauer said it bluntly, we forfeit 3/4 of ourselves in order to be like other people. Self-help is often that forfeiture dressed up as empowerment. You trade depth for clarity, complexity for certainty, mystery for method, tells you. If you just fix your habits, everything will fall into place. But you are not a set of habits. Creates dissonance. You're not enough, but you could be if you buy this. Keeps you in a perpetual state of aspiring, never arriving. Because if you ever did arrive, truly accept yourself, you'd stop buying. You are a paradox, a contradiction, a storm, and a shelter. And anything that tries to flatten you into a checklist is not helping you, it's erasing you. Let's look at the psychology. Cognitive dissonance is a psychological state where holding two conflicting beliefs causes discomfort. Self-help thrives on this. This isn't healing, it's commercialized insecurity. The most powerful human need is not success, it's meaning. Its meaning cannot be downloaded. It cannot be taught in a weekend seminar. It is earned, wrestled with, suffered for. As Viktor Frankl, Holocaust survivor and existential psychologist, wrote, "Life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by lack of meaning and purpose." And herein lies the deep existential contradiction of self-help. It promises purpose, but only delivers performance. You don't need more strategies. You need to ask dangerous questions. You are breaking out of a system that depends on you believing that you are. Who told me I had to become better? Who profits from my sense of inadequacy? What am I truly running from beneath all this self-development? Can I bear the weight of being myself, fixed, unresolved, and still enough? You are not broken, and now you're beginning to see the cracks. The tension is rising, the facade is slipping, and the consequences of not facing this, of staying asleep, are far darker than you've ever imagined. You don't notice it at first. You still think you're growing. You're filling notebooks, hitting step goals, reading your 5th book this month about becoming limitless. You feel productive, driven, even alive, but something quieter is shifting. A tremor beneath the surface, a kind of emotional erosion, kind that doesn't scream, it whispers, like a draft sneaking through a window you didn't know was open, and then one day you wake up and feel nothing, like a character playing a role they don't remember auditioning for. You're going through the motions of becoming better, but it's hollow, synthetic, almost theatrical, flat, not sad, not joyful, just blank. This is what happens when performance becomes your identity. Because the lie of self-help is not just that it sells you false solutions, it's that it replaces your soul with a script. It's a defense mechanism, a numbing strategy. But in the self-help world, it's rebranded as high-vibe living. Let's get clinical for a moment. In psychology, there's something called toxic positivity, the compulsion to always present a cheerful, optimized version of yourself, regardless of your actual emotional state. You don't feel sad, you're manifesting abundance. You're not angry, you're learning a lesson from the universe. You start outsourcing your internal compass to influencers, frameworks, and coaches who don't know you but claim to. You're no longer asking, "What do I feel?" You're asking, "What would my ideal self feel right now?" You're not lost, you're on a journey of transformation. This isn't emotional health, it's emotional denial, disguised in affirmations and vision boards. Your authentic experience is being gaslit by your curated identity. So the more you try to escape, the tighter it wraps around your throat. But it gets worse. The more you suppress your truth for the sake of self-improvement, the more disconnected you become from your actual self. When you internalize the idea that you are not enough, your brain interprets that as a threat. So it floods you with stress hormones. Cortisol, adrenaline, anxiety becomes your baseline. And just like any addict, you need another hit, another book, another podcast, another productivity app. It's subtle, but it's psychological self-abandonment. And here's the kicker. The more you try to fix yourself with these tools, the more broken you feel when they don't work. Why? Because each failed attempt reinforces the same internal narrative. Maybe I really am the problem. You're stuck in a self-reinforcing loop of inadequacy. Let's look at the neurobiology. The brain is wired for survival, not enlightenment. Your limbic system, the part responsible for emotions and survival, responds powerfully to perceived threats. Then self-help steps in like a dealer with a quick hit of dopamine, a new habit tracker, a motivational video, 5-minute hack to rewire your brain. But these are short-term neurochemical boosts. It's not long-term healing. Your dopamine peaks, then crashes. You're not improving, you're self-medicating. Now zoom out. Look at the cultural scale. In a society built on capitalism and comparison, your inadequacy is profitable. Social media doesn't just display your friends' lives, it curates the illusion that everyone else has figured it out. So what do? You compensate. You build your own illusion. You post your vision board, your smoothie bowl, your 5 a.m. gym check-in out because it makes you feel real, but because it makes you feel seen. But being seen is not the same as being known. And deep down, you can feel the loneliness. A hollowness softened by structure, pain buried under piles of sticky notes and highlighters and habit stacks. A loneliness masked by productivity. This is the hidden consequence of self-help culture. You become more efficient at avoiding yourself. You turn your emotional life into a management problem. You treat your soul like a to-do list. And in doing so, you forget how to simply be. Jean Baudrillard once said, "We live in a world where there is more and more information and less meaning." You could rewrite that today as, we live in a world with more and more self-help and less self-understanding. Let's talk about identity. In your effort to optimize, you might find that your sense of self starts fragmenting. You're not one person, you're a brand, a project, a constant stream of self-assessments. You stop asking, who am I? Start asking, what do I need to fix next? There's no pause, and more like drowning on land. No integration. It's just a perpetual forward motion that feels less like growth. You keep running not because you're improving, but because you're terrified of what might happen if you stop. Mindfulness becomes productivity. Meditation becomes optimization. Even spiritual awakening becomes a trend with merch and hashtags. And here's where the consequences turn spiritual. The modern self-help world has colonized the sacred. It's hijacked ancient wisdom and turned it into bite-sized, marketable platitudes. Because it can't be sold, it can't be hacked. It can't be simplified into 5 ways to reinvent your life. But real transformation is not pretty. It's not a montage. It's not something you can monetize or schedule. It's messy. It's painful. It involves death of ego, of illusions, of identities you once clung to. And that kind of transformation is the very thing most self-help avoids. And so, the industry keeps you stuck in limbo. And slowly you lose the ability to hear your own intuition, to trust your own pain, to believe in your own wisdom, improving, always improving, but never arriving, always doing, rarely being. Here's the final consequence: the erosion of trust in your inner voice. You start believing that the answers are always outside you, in books, gurus, apps, seminars. You become alien to yourself. It's the cost of endless self-help. It doesn't bring you back to yourself. It pulls you further away. And most people will never even realize it. But you're not most people. You've seen through the fog. You're ready not just to reject the script, but to burn it, to reclaim what was stolen, to rebel not for the sake of rebellion, but for the sake of truth. The next part is not easy. It never is. But freedom never is. And it begins with the question that terrifies most and liberates few. What if you never needed to be fixed? You're here, finally. After years of motivational mantras, biohacks, life maps, and color-coded journals, you've reached the edge of the well-lit path. Behind you is the assembly line of better, humming with empty affirmations. In front of you, nothing. No guides, no checklist, no gold star path to greatness. Just a terrifying, beautiful truth staring you down. You were never broken. You were never a machine. And the real work, the honest, raw, gut-wrenching work begins now. Welcome to the rebellion. No, this isn't about throwing your planner in a bonfire or unfollowing every productivity influencer on Instagram. This is deeper. This is about waking up from the trance of self-fixing. About reclaiming your humanity from the sterile hands of the self-help industry. Let's start with a radical idea. Growth is not the same as progress. Progress is linear. It's measurable. It's goal-oriented. It asks, what's next? But growth is wild. It's cyclical. It's inconvenient. It sometimes looks like breakdowns, withdrawal, silence, doubt. It's nights you spend crying in the shower because some part of your old identity is crumbling and you have no idea what comes after. Growth doesn't care about your content calendar. It doesn't perform well in algorithm metrics. It just is. And that's the first rebellion. Stop performing your healing. You don't need to turn every insight into a reel. You cannot be free while denying your own complexity. The goal is not to become perfect tights, to become real. Not everything you feel has to be shared or packaged. Some of the most sacred growth happens in silence, in the dark. Discomfort so raw, it feels like skin being peeled back. You don't need to tell anyone you're working on yourself. You're allowed to keep your transformation private. In fact, maybe you must. Here's the second rebellion. Reclaim your shadow. Carl Jung knew this all too well. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you will call it fate. The shadow is everything you've been told not to be. The anger, the grief, the jealousy, the laziness, the softness, the wildness. It stubs the parts of you that didn't fit into the high-performance version of yourself, so you buried them, labeled them bad. But here's the twist. That's where your power lives. You cannot be whole until you embrace your inner contradictions. It's quiet now. The noise has faded. It's the hustle, the hacks, the "you got this" quotes. Gone. The machinery of self-betterment silenced. You stand alone in the wreckage of your old ambitions, charred checklists, melted mantras, fragments of the person you once tried so hard to perfect. And in that stillness, something ancient stirs. A whisper, not from a guru, not from a book, but from you. Not the you tried to build, but the one that was always there. Before the optimization, before the shame, before the belief that you needed to be more. Here is the ultimate truth. There is no version of you to become. Because the self was never a project. It was a presence. And all along, while you chased blueprints for becoming, you were avoiding the unbearable intimacy of simply being. This is the final radical realization. You were not born to be better. You were born to be whole. It's not found at the end of a 30-day challenge. Wholeness is what remains when all illusions burn away. And wholeness is not a goal. It's not a state you unlock after enough mindset shifts. Think about it. Who told you that you needed fixing in the first place? You weren't born with a vision board tattooed to your soul. You were born wild, curious, present, fully immersed in this moment, not striving for the next. You weren't born with a morning routine. You weren't born comparing your life to others. So who convinced you otherwise? Was it a culture that preaches that your worth must be earned? Was it a society that profits from your inadequacy? Is it a family system that rewarded obedience over authenticity? Maybe all of them. Well-dressed noise, marketed noise, sacred sounding, productivity infused, dopamine optimized, nonsense. But none of that was true. It was just noise. The truth is simpler and heavier. You're already enough. Not as in you're fine the way you are. Now stop trying. Everyone fighting to rise above the crowd, to prove their significance by outshining everyone else. But in doing so, we've forgotten the miracle of being ordinary. You are enough because you are, because you exist, because you breathe, because there is a pulse behind your ribs that no life coach installed. You can strive endlessly, but you cannot choose what truly moves your soul. What cracks you open? What brings tears to your eyes at 2 a.m.? What gives you chills when you hear a certain song or smell a certain scent from childhood? Because there is a soul behind your eyes that existed before a single guru said 10x your potential. You don't need to be extraordinary. Let that land. You don't need to be extraordinary. This world is already insane with everyone trying to be exceptional, of being human, messy, conflicted, soft, imperfect, alive. Arthur Schopenhauer once wrote, "A man can do what he wills, but he cannot will what he wills." That's the paradox, isn't it? Those aren't things you build. They're things you remember. You were never meant to become yourself. You were meant to return to yourself. That's the ultimate liberation, not achieving something new, but remembering something old. So ask yourself now, not with urgency, but with reverence. What parts of you did you abandon in your race to improve? That child who didn't care about goals. It's that artist who created without caring about the algorithm. That wanderer who didn't need to know the destination. They're still here, buried beneath the metrics, waiting for permission to come home. And here's the cosmic joke. All that time you spent trying to improve yourself was actually a diversion from the one thing that would have healed you. Self-acceptance, not complacency, not laziness. But radical, breath-stealing, heart-wrenching acceptance. The kind that says, yes, I am afraid, and I don't need to conquer it. Yes, I am unsure, and that doesn't mean I'm failing. Yes, I am flawed, and still worthy of love. There is a kind of power that emerges when you stop striving and start surrendering. Surrender is not giving up. It's giving into the truth, to the moment, to the mystery. It's letting go of the delusion that you can control your way into meaning, because meaning isn't built. Meaning is revealed when you're still enough to notice it. When the striving falls away, you begin to notice things. The way sunlight hits the floor, the sound of wind through leaves, the tenderness in your own breath, the quiet hum of being alive, because it was never hunger for success. It was hunger for home. And suddenly, that restless hunger, the one that pushed you through all the self-help, begins to soften, and you are home. Right now, right here, in this breath. No longer a project, just a presence. You want a challenge? Try waking up tomorrow with nothing to prove. Try creating something without sharing it, resting without guilt. Try loving yourself without conditions. Let's try being without becoming. If you can do that, if only for a moment, you will experience the kind of freedom no book can offer. Okay, because this isn't the end of a journey, it's the beginning of your return to yourself, to the ground beneath your striving, to the silence beneath your thoughts, to the truth you've always known but never had words for. You are not a problem to be solved. You are a soul unfolding. And now that the illusion has shattered, now that the blueprint has burned, you are free. Not because you've mastered your life, but because you've reclaimed it. So let this be your closing mantra, a command, not a step, but a sacred remembering. I was never broken. I was just buried. And now I return